I'm going very hypothetical here.
We want to make a game.
Yeah.
Try not to make it
Favourite fantasy.
I don't know.
When we meet again.
When do you warm up? I don't know why I'm saying I was playing Welcome to the FedCast. Hello, and welcome to this special episode of the FedCast. I'm Dan Freeds.
I'm Jaymii Plays.
And today's episode is all about diversity. And today I have some excellent people to discuss that with. Mahli-Ann.
Hi, I'm Mahli-Ann. I am a PhD student at the University of Sydney. I research game studies. I'm also the Digital Games Research Association student representative, and I'm also on the editorial board for the student game studies peer-reviewed journal Press Start.
Awesome. We've also got Mateja.
Hey, I'm Mateja. I write for Capsule Computers about film and video games. And yeah, if you want to see some of my stuff, feel free to have a look at that.
And we also have Russell.
Hi there, everyone. Yes, I'm Russell. I run the YouTube channel The Adventures of Russell. I have an AOR gaming section for that one, so just check me out on YouTube, The Adventures of Russell. Yeah, and I found out about you guys through GX, where I met Jaymii. So yeah, there you go.
Brilliant. And you've also got me from GameFed, or the FedCast. So let's kick off with question 1. What are the benefits of diversity in video games in both content and the creators themselves? Would anyone like to start?
Sure. So Adrian Shaw has this nice little wrap-up of how people have argued the benefits of diversity in representation in games in particular. Having diverse representation can mold social realities and relationship. It reflects the assumed power dynamics of a culture, and in turn, that influences how we treat each other. Having certain characters represented also draws an intended audience towards or in away from a particular medium by representing those certain identities. And then from, last one, educational point of view, it has a potential to broaden our own worldviews, seeing those who are unlike ourselves to put oneself in someone else's shoes.
Wow, you got such a beautiful academic answer. And I just want to say, I also just want really great stories because I'm tired of the same stories.
Can you host this? That was great. That was amazing.
Oh, right. Sure, can do. Send it over.
I agree with being able to sort of have a more diverse community creates a sort of plurality of stories. Otherwise, you end up with, a deluge of generic military shooter featuring generic dude bro.
White dude bro.
Gunning down wave upon wave of generic enemies, I guess, as well.
And then, the second in command in that rank is usually an alien or a lizard or something, and then the next one is a female, and then the next one's a robot.
Oh yeah, I'd rather play as any of those second in commands.
Agreed. As I think I mentioned in the first podcast we did, Dan, where my favorite nostalgia game that I first played, the first shooter I played was Brute Force.
Oh, yes.
And oh my god, getting past that first campaign where you play as the white male guy so you can actually unlock the first other character is the worst part of the game.
But great game from there on out, though.
Well, kudos to you for sticking through it.
Actually, that conversation sort of ties into the second part of the question there. So it was, what are the benefits of diversity in video games, both in the context and then the creators themselves? So, if we think about, there's actually this huge problem in the way games are developed because it's so precarious, it's so risky. That's why a lot of AAA games don't want to invest so much money that that famous 1983 video game crash where they spent $20 million to get the rights to make the E.T. game. Yeah, that classic, yeah. And then just ruining, in the entire industry in North America, right? So people are really reluctant to invest that much money just to have it completely bomb. So we're stuck with these same boring stories because people just assume that it will work every time.
But there's also a myth that games with main characters of people of color don't sell, which is also a myth we think we need to try and debunk, and hopefully more games, once we prove that, we go, yes, this game sold, look, it's actually gonna work.
Yeah, you see that with Don't Nod and Life is Strange. Like, they couldn't find a publisher for it because their main character was female. And yeah, like, they kept getting feedback from publishers basically saying, like, you can't, this game isn't going to sell, you have to make your main character male. And it's just like, I'm not sure that story would have worked if the main character was a guy. Like,
yeah, and how good was that game? And how uninteresting were the male characters in the game?
Yeah.
Russell, you looked like you had something to say a second ago.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see a change. Zero Horizon or Zero Dawn, one of the two.
Horizon Zero Dawn?
That's it. Right, yeah. It's too expensive, I can't buy it yet. But like the buzz I've seen around that one, where basically, you know, even Hex had something about it where it's sort of like she's a powerful character and the whole gender balance is sort of played quite evenly. Like apparently there's a character who is a male but does typically feminine skills within the tribe, but it's seen as completely normal within that game. So it's like things are starting to change. Like Tomb Raider isn't so much just, you know, this busty Tomb Raider lady. It's like she's a fledged out character now. So it's starting to change.
I find the setting of Horizon Zero Dawn extremely interesting because they're essentially depicting like essentially a post-cultural society. So everything that we know about the world today, including things about how to perform gender, are essentially like that society collapses, it's all gone. So as a creator as a writer of stories, like it's basically you have to ask yourself, like, you know, these conventions that I know, do I include them? Why do I include them? What specific sort of circumstances precipitate their inclusion or exclusion? Anyway, sorry, that was my academic rant. I'll get back off my high horse.
No, don't.
So, Jaymii, recently you went to GX Australia and you met a special person. Would you like to talk about that?
Yes, so recently I was at GX Australia. Steph Hex Benedictson was on one of the panels and she had a lovely meet and greet time, which was wonderful, and we just had a chat about being a female and games and just everything we love about that. And I got this quick soundbite from her.
I think video games have been lacking in diversity since video games have existed, pretty much. And I think that just became part of the culture because the people that were making games, I suppose, were born out of a time when women really only could be involved in certain professions like nursing or teaching, being a secretary. Which is crazy because some of the first, computer engineers were women. It really shaped the kind of games that we started to see, and as an industry it can see really limiting for people. The more diversity that we have in terms of the people that are making games at a development level, the more diverse content we'll start to see, and I think it's only a positive thing when the content that you see accurately reflects the people that are consuming it.
Awesome, thanks for that. Would anyone like to speak about that?
Well, what I found particularly interesting is the reflecting of the people making the games, reflecting the audience playing the games. One of the things at one of the panels I went to at GX really highlighted the statistics, and I don't have them off the top of my head right now, but the number of people who are actually of a diverse background playing video games strongly outnumbers the number of people who are diverse who are making video games. So I feel like once the people who are consuming it actually reflect the people making it, they'll actually be able to have like this two-way discourse and better stories and only just flesh out the whole community and industry of gaming.
Yeah, like ESA has those statistics which look at gender representation. So 41% of players in North America who play video games are women. And the average player age is 35. But those studies don't really talk about people's ethnicities and race, which is a whole nother thing that we should actually be concerned about. Or sexuality. No mention about sexuality in these studies at all.
Yeah, it was kind of funny how, like, if you, just as an example, it's probably going to get a lot of people upset, but looking at Mass Effect Andromeda, I haven't played any of the games. I tried a bit of 3 and I just couldn't get into it. Came in too late. But, like, I noticed how, you know, you couldn't unlock certain trophies because same-sex relationships was sort of like a side note, and like they didn't really go anywhere. And it was like, and there was a huge debate on the Pocketeers Facebook page over it. But yeah, it's just like if there were more diverse people developing these games, it wouldn't be so difficult to get it into the game to reflect the people who play it. Like I'm pretty annoyed at the fact that, you know, a same-sex relationship within that game doesn't carry the same weight as a opposite-sex one. Like, I'm not interested in women, so stop making me play with them. Like,
that makes me sad because I guess playing the first Mass Effect games, it was, yeah, you did have those relationship choices were actually, I think, quite a good focus. But it did start, like, especially when you came to number 2, there were more options. If you're a bi person who likes to swing, like, the options, they got better in number 2 and number 3, but it was still limiting that who you could and couldn't romance. It's sad to hear that Andromeda puts less of a focus on that, but I do know that the cutscenes for those aren't as good, because I know in my first playthrough of Mass Effect, the original trilogy, my relationship with Liara was just, that was everything. I was very smitten with her. I played as a female Shep, by the way, so...
Yep. Oh, well, of course you do.
The way to play. But yeah, I will stop my rant about Mass Effect, the original trilogy. So I haven't finished playing Andromeda, so I've been hearing these things and I am disappointed to hear these things, but I do want to play through myself and see how much you can get out of it, even if it's a little bit.
An aspect that I found annoying in regards to Dragon Age Inquisition was that I, like many of my friends, am an Iron Bull sexual. What annoyed me about romancing him as a character is that when he talks about his past, he deliberately mentions that he has been in essentially what are polyamorous relationships. So I was excited at the possibility of entering into something similar with him and having my own sort of relationship structure represented in a game, which would have been awesome. But yeah, he refuses to sort of even sort of discuss that, I guess, with your character. It's sort of brushed off as, I don't want to share you with anyone, which I find to be a little bit disconcerting. There are definitely, I feel like there's probably someone who knows about these things, or at least someone who's looked at a book about polyamory, and has probably had some input in designing these characters and these romance options. But it really does suck if, you know, you're not able to sort of explore that. But I guess, you know, it's better than not being represented at all.
I guess I think what we're seeing is people are starting to go, we need to include more, but they haven't gone all the way yet. There still needs to be, there's still a long way to go in being able to go, hey, no, this is like a true representation of my sexuality, or do your research.
Yeah.
More time and more money having people give their advice, I believe, in the process of video game making for those who are on the team who may not necessarily understand the concepts that they're trying to represent.
I'll go back to Mass Effect, because I love Mass Effect. It's one of my favorite video games. Love the original series so much. Probably played them all between 3 and 5 times each one. And although I reckon the first one, it was very simple with the romance options. You had, I believe, the 2 straight options, and then you had Liara, who was the either character. You could be a female or a male and get with her. Then Mass Effect 2 did expand on that quite a lot. I reckon that was probably the best example.
Yes.
And
then I was very sad that I couldn't have Garrus from the start.
Yeah. Oh, Garrus is the best. I mean, I'm straight, completely straight, and I was playing as FemShep in my last playthrough with Garrus, which was sick. But usually it's Tali for me, best girl Tali.
Oh, yeah.
I will forgive them a little bit for 3. They probably had some design choices in the game that made it a little bit harder. If anyone's finished 2, you'd probably know that half your crew can die at the end of the game.
Spoilers.
Sorry, guys.
It's okay. It's like so many years old. It's fine.
I do hate doing that, because I know just because the game's old doesn't mean everyone's played it, but The last mission is called Suicide Mission, so it puts it out there. But coming out of that, they did go into Inquisition, which did do some good things. Like you look at, I've completely forgotten the name of the characters now because I haven't played it in a long time. But you did have Iron Bull.
Yeah.
You could have a homosexual relationship with him, could you?
Yeah, so he was pretty much open to whatever, as far as I'm aware.
So that was good. And you had the magician, Mr. Mustache.
Oh, fuck, I forgot his name. Anders? No.
Mr. Mustache it is.
It's Mr. Mustache. He was a good character. I quite liked him. And I recall a lesbian relationship with an elf.
What I found interesting in regards to... So, there's a character in the Dragon Age series called Anders, and he is, quite clearly a homosexual mage.
Ooh.
And one aspect that I found interesting in terms of, his relationship with the player character is that he actually initiates romance. So with most of the NPCs, you have to choose the romance option, There's the asshole option, the angel option, and then the romance option. With him, he's kind of like, hey, I kind of think I like you. Would you be interested in something? And yeah, I thought that was definitely an interesting way to approach the game. Or at least doing romance options in a game.
I don't know what this game is, but hard yes.
What I also find interesting is also on the other side of the spectrum, having characters where you don't know their sexuality at all, and they can turn you down. Because I really would love to be turned down by a character. I mean, that's horrible, but it's also part of life. Just everyone's just so, I will, and you get to pick and you go, oh, actually, I don't know this character's sexuality, even though I might assume that they're straight and I'm playing a female character. They might go, actually, no, I'm not interested. Or even if they are as playing a straight male character and I'm playing a straight female character, they might go, actually, I'm not into you. Sorry. And I think
what would be nice is if you get turned down.
Also more asexuality as well in video games. I feel like we put a lot of emphasis on relationships, and obviously it's a huge part of life, but also non-sexual relationships are great too, guys.
Yeah. Getting turned down and then having the character spend some of the game trying to cheer you up and show you that, you can still be awesome friends.
Yes.
Oh, I want this game.
So I'm looking at the romance sheet for Mass Effect. What am I talking about? Dragon Age Inquisition, made by the same people. So you've got a few characters that are straight. So you've got Cassandra, she'll only go with males. Blackwall will only go with females. But then you've got a whole bunch that actually go either way. So you've got Josephine will go male or female. Iron Bull, male or female. Sarah will only go with another female. Dorian, who is Mr. Mustache, will only go with another male. And then you've got some interesting ones. Cullen will go with a human female or an elven female. But not with a Quasari female.
Okay.
And then there's Solus, who will only go with an elven female, which I assume is because of culture. I just thought I'd bring that up, yeah.
Actually, do you mind if I throw out a question? Because I'm interested in hearing from everyone else. Because we're talking about representation and being, representing ourselves. But what about, representation which is contextual? So, having a real strong connection to things that perhaps we don't see ourselves as in the real world. So, for example, I was really invested in the beautiful friendship between Pikachu and Ash Ketchum. Right?
Yes.
I guess for me, I love the Uncharted series because there is that really cool story element and whatnot, and it really comes to a head in the fourth one. But the fact I get to run around as a hot guy sort of has wonders for me because I don't look like that. So HD did wonders for Drake. But I guess, for me, video games in the sense as a way of escapism, I said in our chat before this, is that I love Sonic the Hedgehog, but it's partially because he's the underdog, but it's sort of he's just got this attitude of speed and whatnot. It's just I don't have time for waiting for people, move. So, I guess, I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's sort of where I come from with video games. It's just a chance to be someone else, but also a chance to escape.
Yeah, I agree. I'm always looking for new experiences, and I feel like video game, like we can watch TV and we can read books and we get great insight into characters, but there's nothing like playing a game where you actually get to really feel like someone else and see things from their perspective and act under the way that they're thinking and the choices that you make. I just remember playing that first 20 minutes of Firewatch and absolutely wanting to burst into tears and struggling with the choice that he had to make in that situation. And I think, oh, what would I actually do?
It's the start of the game, Mahli-Ann.
Basically, it's the start of a game, and I'll explain. Basically, his wife gets early onset dementia, and you have to choose whether you're going to try and take care of her yourself or whether you're going to put her in special care with her family in Australia. And you're really struggling to take care of her, but you want to take care of her, or do you feel like taking her out of your care is the best option? And it is all just text pre-setting up the actual game, which is pretty much like go and explore this beautiful place. But the choice that he had to make as part of that backstory absolutely broke my heart.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to flag that question because it's the other argument, which is a really good one, which is sort of saying that why not have diverse representation in games if it's fantasy already, right? We can connect to so many different people. If there's no point in just having a target audience, if we can connect to deep connections to a whole range of characters. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like with Uncharted 4, where they are exploring their relationship and whatnot, I won't spoil anything for you. It was I really connected to that story, even though I'm like, oh, he's talking to a girl, like I wish that was a guy, like it'd be so much hotter and so much cooler. But I was still able to connect to that story. But it just shows that, you know, if it was a guy, maybe there would be a bit of backlash, like, you know, the whole Gamergate thing, like would probably throw it under the bus. But the thing is, like, we know the representation is there. We know that we exist and we play these games. So I'm sure it's not too far off. So yeah, obviously there is a connection that we can connect to with games.
All right, thanks very much, guys. Let's go straight into question 2. What does an inclusive community mean to you? Would anyone like to start us off?
I just want to say, when I moved to Sydney, I have 0 friends in Sydney. I also lead a job that has a very unsociable lifetime, so I'm always working in the evenings and weekends, and my free time is in the middle of the day on a weekday. And so being able to, so I actually wanted to start playing some online multiplayer, but was really nervous, and everyone had always made me really nervous about doing this. I mean, I did it as a teenager a little bit. I played some RuneScape and whatnot, but I completely blocked it out of my life for many years, and I'm coming to it as an adult. I'd never been more scared in my life. But so having a safe place where you can actually come and be yourself is something that I find super important. And once I found some good people and good communities which I knew that I could be that person and I wouldn't be harassed, I felt amazing. And I finally have I have such a big and vast array of friendships, and even going to conventions such as GX, and I've met all you lovely people who are the guests today, and I've just feel included in a world where it can be very easy to feel alone.
This is what my PhD is on. I'm looking at how gaming culture and certain spaces and how technology shapes the affordances of how we interact and engage with other people in different relationships and different spaces. So I find that a lot of women actually sort of curate their own behavior. So you were just talking about how going online and perhaps not wanting to chat with strangers, being concerned that knowing that there's a possibility to get harassed and these things. And this is actually going to flow into what I wanted to say. At GX, actually, it was really interesting that there was so much conversation going around self-care. So a lot of the game devs were talking about how can we survive as game developers in this industry. I thought it was sort of interesting because we're talking about the assumption that this culture has this possibility. I mean, this is a negative side of it. You were being really lovely and positive before, so sorry about dropping that.
No, I think we definitely have to address the fact that there is a negative side, and that moving towards the positive side isn't necessarily an easy step to make, and we can always improve and try and get there little bit by little bit each day.
Yeah, I feel that for some sections of the game community, they refuse to accept that things are anything less than as they should be and perfect. First step to sort of changing anything is admitting that there might be a problem and that there might be something that can be done about it. So yeah, making sort of a more positive space, a more inclusive space, I feel is definitely a worthwhile goal and something that can definitely help out the community in the long run.
One thing that did surprise me is when I joined the Pocketeers Facebook page was how accepting and progressive and kind everyone was. Being a gamer, G-A-Y, gamer. Yeah, it's weird saying Gamergate and you think, oh, those don't work. Yeah, it was sort of like, we'd had these conversations about, like the Mass Effect Andromeda. That was a bit of a heated discussion, but the thing is, it's sort of like we all had different views, but we sort of was understanding, and like there's been other outcries, and we were all like, this is stupid, like, it's all been quite inclusive and quite together. And even like Rad, she's only just recently stepped up to the new role of like presenter sort of thing, but she's doing so much for representation. Like, she's an Asian female in video games, like that's very niche. That sounds horrible saying that, but it's like she's doing so much, and like she's defended people like me. So when I saw her at GX, I thanked her so much for that.
While we're talking about Rad, do we want to listen to that? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was about to say, thanks very much, Russell, for pointing out Rad, because we've got a sound clip from Rad. So why don't we listen to it now?
But also, you can't be too scared, and you have to realise that if you want anything to change, if you want there to be a good discussion, you have to talk honestly, and you have to talk openly, and you have to say that you're going to say what's important regardless of the terrible people that are going to yell at you for it.
And thanks very much, Rad, for letting us use that clip. That's from the Roundtable podcast. I'd very much recommend you all go and listen to it. It's absolutely fantastic. So would anyone like to get started on that?
Well, I want to start with saying that the podcast then continues that Rad only feels safe to be able to do that because also there is such a great support network at the ABC, and she does feel supported and safe within that environment itself. Obviously, no one wants to be targeted. Like, you don't want to have to lean on your support system, but the fact that she has one helps give her the courage to talk out.
Yeah, it's like rather admirable, but also quite. How do I sort of say this? Like, not everyone obviously has that support network, right? And I think that I love the positivity behind that and saying, like, yes, we shouldn't be afraid to speak up. But, oh gosh, the other thing I want to say is, like, shouldn't we be making the culture more inclusive so that we're not afraid to speak up at all? Like, the burden isn't for those who are speaking up. The burden to fix this should be the people who are making it a problem, to make people scared to talk about it.
Yeah, I can draw examples from other things. So I work with other organizations to get, like, marriage equality and gay rights and stuff like that. And there's one campaigner who's Ivan Hinton-Teo from Just Equal, who's like, he's moved his campaign from just gay people fighting for things because we've been doing it for so long that we're starting to get fatigued and tired. So now we're starting to look to the broader community for support. So it's sort of like we're looking for our heroes that are like straight. So like, Dan, you're quite happy doing this for us. So you are in a sense a hero because you're using your, not power and privilege, I guess, but your position to be able to fight for diversity, to change things. So it's no longer just the oppressed that are fighting now. It's those who are with the oppressors. I don't know. Sorry. But
you say hero, and I just feel like it's just the normal thing to do. I feel like humanity has to realize it's what humanity actually means. Just in general, just be hey, if you're a person who is in a safe and comfortable position, who can, if you see harassment and you can do something about it, do something about it. Obviously, everyone needs to put self-care and safety first, but when you join together, and if you're not necessarily a person who is often the target of harassment, then yes, speak up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's not an easy position to, like, it takes a lot of emotional labor to both basically speak out against that and also to be the support network for someone who is speaking out.
Hmm.
It's not an easy task for anyone.
It's good to remember that minorities usually don't have the option to opt out of that effective labor, right?
Yeah.
That's how we make that distinction between privilege, is that people who are privileged enough can sort of opt in and opt out of doing that work, while minorities have no choice but to always be doing it.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a fundamental aspect of privilege that I definitely want to get across to more people. I obviously, as a geeky gamer individual, I have had friends who got caught up in Gamergate, and so it's heartbreaking to see otherwise reasonable people become so rabid in a really toxic sort of way. So on an individual level, I try, I guess, and move them away from that and like fight toxicity in a sort of personal way. But I understand that that's something that I can do because I am in a place of relative privilege, and it's not something that I would expect of anyone else.
I think one of the strongest things we can do, regardless of who we are, is humanize ourselves. Like, I think it's so easy with the internet to disconnect from who we are, but I think the easiest way to sort of humanize ourselves is to share our stories, or sort of show who we are. Like, we're not expected to, and we don't have to. But the thing is, as soon as we start talking beyond of just labels and stuff like that, we start to sort of see past that in a sense. Like, you'll notice so many campaigns have been successful in the past because they haven't used like bad rhetoric and stuff like that. They've used human stories like shared love and stuff like that. So I think we're slowly changing, and if we give more examples, like, you know, the Pocketeers Facebook group, Rad talking out, stuff like that, like, eventually people will see that, you know, this is actually pretty awesome and you should get on board, sort of thing.
I wanted to just quickly talk on the Pocketeers Facebook group. For those who don't know who the Pocketeers are, Good Game used to have an internet show called Good Game Pocket, and there was a following of that, and that were called the Pocketeers. Now that the show no longer exists, because the ABC have cancelled it, the group still exists, and they're still a great supportive group. And I was going to say, one of the reasons I feel safe as part of that group is because we have very excellent admins who have an excellent code of conduct. And so I feel like anyone can feel safe because they know that if something happens, the admins will step in, and they have in the past, but they don't just step in, they resolve the issue. I feel like whenever there is a disagreement or an argument, that it's always resolved and everyone leaves it feeling okay, and that we've grown from it. So more of that, please. I just want an admin in everyday life. I just want my own personal admin, administrator, just whenever I'm on the internet. And then if something goes wrong, they'll just go, no, I've got the power here. Let's sort this out.
I think I even remember an episode on Pocket where Nick Boy, like, I think someone asked about why aren't you covering Gamergate or something like that, and he just blatantly turned around and said, if you agree with these horrible people, then we don't want to deal with you, like, just go away, sort of thing. And I think that could have been a bit of a reality check for some people. And he's also in that position of power where he can just turn around and go, yeah, you can bring it, but, you know, I'm Nick Boy.
Did anyone see that great panel at GX about masculinity in gaming culture?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, how good was that? What I really loved was how they, from the get-go, said Gamergate, MROs, I hate groups who also hate men and masculinity itself, because if you're policing masculinity, that's hating masculinity, right? Like,
Yes.
Putting everything in a small box.
Yes.
Definitely. That's one thing I find a little bit difficult sometimes, is that I can come across as quite effeminate and whatnot, and it took me a while to accept that in myself. But it's sort of like, there's sort of power in that. This is where it also comes back down to like visibility in games and developers and stuff like that. Because yeah, with masculinity, like, you know, I can't walk a certain way. I've got to know how to fix cars, and I know nothing about cars. And I grew up in Bathurst, so that says something. Yeah, and it's just one thing that really frustrates me is that, you know, this whole need to be a certain way of masculine, and it's sort of it can be reflected against women, going, oh, you know, the hate of being treated a certain way ends up being a lash out towards women. As a male, I can't really speak out about that because I'm not female. I've noticed it, and I can even just see how society works, sort of thing, against certain things. But like, you know, it's all about equality, really, and people just seem to be caught up in that because, you know, men have to act a certain way, and we've got a lot of work to do to change that.
It's also women on women, because I don't know if you ever had that phase at high school or young adolescence where you do actually, it's a horrible phase, and I think, but most people, other girls also agree that the hate pink, I hate other girls phase. And I just hate...
Not like other girls.
Yes, and I'm not like other girls. It's horrible that within society themselves that we turn women on women as well. Ugh, it makes me sad.
Yeah, so like this conversation is happening, and what feminism fights against is the patriarchy, right? Like, it's not hating a certain gender necessarily. It's about how patriarchy is affecting all of us by putting us into tiny little boxes to tell us how to do, like, live our lives.
Yeah.
Do you feel any of the games out there have sort of played on any of those things? Like, I don't know why, but Duke Nukem's coming to mind, even though I haven't really ever played it. But, you know, the whole hyper-masculinity or the over-femininity, like, if you look at comics or whatever, you know, women are drawn one way while men are drawn another, and it's just like, is there... I don't know, is it really reflected in games? Like, Grand Theft Auto 5 probably is an example where it's sort of like, it's supposed to be satire about how men treat women and all that stuff, but, you know, I watched a TEDx talk about it, and he said satire is like a fine point, not a friggin' mallet where you just whack someone over the head with it. Like, it's a finesse, and it's sort of like, is there other games that are sort of playing into the whole... Yeah,
like, when does satire end up become, like, reproducing what they're trying to be critiquing, right? Yeah.
It's a lot of the time, for whatever reason, internet trolls confuse satire for essentially just repeating and replicating the exact things that, like, they're apparently not agreeing with. But the whole point of satire is, if you're saying the exact same thing as someone who, or you're creating something which espouses the exact same thing as the thing which you're meant to be making fun of, then you're not satirizing it. You're just repeating it.
Okay, and shall we move on to question 3? So earlier in the podcast, we talked about GX Australia, very inclusive community. So how can we bring the concepts of GX to other conventions and events? Would anyone like to get us started?
So I have some personal experience in this regard, as I used to be the president of my university's Geek Society. All glory be to Sutek. One of my proudest moments was, essentially, I created 2 new positions for the society, which was a female officer and a queer officer. So basically going out of, like, the organizer to go out of their way and to find and create representation, whether it's through quotas or whatever, is definitely something which helps create a more diverse community as well. So that's my 2 cents.
One of my favourite things about GX was its code of conduct that they had on their website and mentioned in their opening ceremony for everyone to have a read of. And it was just about how best to interact with everyone within the space, to treat everyone with respect, but to be open and have conversations, but be respectful if people don't want to have those conversations today, and just basically interact with each other, but in a safe way. And I felt like if every convention I went to at least had that, bringing that to something, say like PAX or Supernova, one of those bigger conventions, it would take time. But I feel like even just having it there to say, hey, this is actually what we believe in, and we're going to mention that in our opening ceremony, please try and follow this, is a big deal and makes a huge difference.
Yeah, one thing that surprised me with Supernova is that, there's posters everywhere telling people not to touch people's cosplay, or if there's a female character, don't touch her without permission sort of thing, which shocked me, but I'm not attracted to women, so I have no urge to touch them anyway, but that's not appropriate. But if it's just a cultural thing, but yeah, definitely having that code of conduct. I agree with you. That's where I'm going with that.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, Teo, you mentioned about quotas before, and I'm actually, I reckon it's, complex, but I am sort of on the side of that as, pragmatic steps that we can sort of enact. So, I think we all sort of already understand diversity isn't a box to be ticked, that it's, a process that we have to keep improving. So having these things like a diversity statement, inclusivity statement, code of conduct, it would also be excellent to have them which can be sort of updated all the time so that they are sort of a bit more fluid, that people can add to them and have suggestions. Oh, and the other thing that I think is always really important about those is that it's really clear who to report bad behavior to, either immediately on site or anonymously through something like email or having a form.
Yes. That admin that secretly follows you everywhere.
Having someone in some manner of authority who can sort of adjudicate in these matters and who's aware of these issues and can hopefully help is definitely a big plus. And I sort of, an addendum I'd like to add in response to your point, Mahli-Ann, is I think that organizers should go out of their way to, if they're having panels and organizers and things like that, they should go out of their way to find more varied people, because all too often, when you put a call out for volunteers, it's very easy to just find a lot of bored white dudes with too much time on their hands. But then an addendum to that you spoke about before was finding one person should not be the end goal. You're trying to create a more representative sample, I guess. So, don't bring someone on to represent all women of color. Don't bring someone to represent all queer identifying individuals. And I think it would also be wrong to ask them to sort of do that.
I think companies, sometimes it's pretty obvious when they have just done the bare minimum to tick the boxes and don't genuinely feel the need, or they could have gone, okay, you did it, but you did it because you had to. I think if the more they realize that, hey, no, this isn't just a box to be ticked, this is something that genuinely means something and it genuinely has an impact on everyone, and that by doing it, you're doing a good job, and by more than just going above the minimum requirements.
It's really interesting that that you mentioned it, because it sort of seems like a marketing campaign instead now. You can stamp diversity on something without really being critical about what you're trying to do, ticking those boxes away and going oh, we are diverse, we totally are, we're really inclusive, we swear, without actually continuing to update those practices, without actually making people feel included at all. Just saying that they are, it becomes sort of this weird distant mantra, and it sort of cleaves the term diversity from concepts such as the less the more upsetting and uneasy things such as inequality or racism. That's where diversity is from, right? These are concepts that go together, these are what we're trying to fix. But if we only are saying but we are diverse, and sort of that positivity that comes with it sometimes just ends up masking what we're trying to do in a weird way.
Yeah. So as we've said before, it's coming and accepting the fact that, things maybe aren't the ideal. So maybe we can do something, be motivated to change things in a small way.
One thing I noticed, I think it was last year or the year before, maybe it was last year, at Supernova, the leader of it was just after the Orlando shooting, which affected so many people around the world. And the leader of Supernova, CEO, whatever he was, came out against safe schools.
Oh, yeah.
And so many people, a lot of the people who were at the convention to have stalls and stuff, put up gay flags and stuff like that. I know Hex and a bunch of other writers sort of put out a letter saying, we're coming before the fans, we're not coming for him because we don't agree with what he says. So it's like these people took a stand at a convention where the person that was running it didn't agree with what they agreed with, but they still took a stand, I guess. So it's sort of like people, even if there isn't that diversity there, they're still stepping up to the plate and going, you know what, we're going to bring it anyway, sort of thing, which is great to see.
Yeah, definitely. I do remember so many people boycotting and just not attending at all as well.
Even, like, I dressed up in cosplay that year. I did The Dark Magician, but I wore my rainbow flag the whole day because I'm a little pin, because I'm like, yeah, I'm here and I'm queer and you're going to have to get used to it.
I guess if we're talking about inclusiveness, we should talk about Twitch's Unity Day that is coming up.
Yes. Oh, I almost forgot. I think this is excellent. So on May 26th, which is Friday, which is in the past if you're listening to this podcast, but in the future for now, so I'm going to pretend it's still in the future.
Time is all relative.
On Friday, yes. So they're holding a Unity Day, which basically wants to hold discussions and people to live stream about creating inclusive communities, and just basically have put their hand up and said, look, we think Twitch wants to be on board with this. And I think that's an awesome step in the right direction when a big organization says that. And I'm really, really hoping it does it well.
I think we all are.
Well, Twitch has such a major share across the world, sort of thing. Like everyone can connect via it. There's so many things on it. They played Pokemon collectively, I think, on Twitch. Was it on Twitch?
Twitch plays Pokemon.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so out of the loop.
Oh, praise the Helix.
Yes, pretty much. The fact that they're coming out and doing this is such a big and important step. It might actually change their minds and create a better world.
One of the things I think is great about the event is that on their page they're encouraging everyone to create conversations like the one we're having today. In fact, I was looking at the suggested questions that they have, and they're things like, tell us about a time you were included and how it affected you and why that's important. Why do you care about diversity? How do we benefit from our community being diverse? What messages of encouragement, inclusion you'd like to give to other viewers and streamers? So I feel like just continuing the conversation and having a day dedicated to that is just wonderful.
See, it sort of comes back to like humanizing us and sort of bringing those stories to the forefront, because, you know, the anti-groups that hate everything, they just demonize everything and just make all this stuff up. Like they'll never win in the end because they've just created all these weird snowmen, I guess you can say, but in the end they'll just melt away because they're not real in a sense. While we have human stories which we can reflect and share with people, and people connect to that in the end. And that's all you can really do, is just find a way to connect.
That is a really beautiful metaphor. It's really heartwarming.
I find that very heartwarming too. I guess the thought that I have in regards to that is just it's melting those snowmen. It'll take time, and they'll do it by themselves eventually. But the faster we can get rid of those snowmen, the better it'll be for everyone. Absolutely.
Bring some hairdryers.
It's just ironic because the Conservatives like to call us snowflakes, but, you know, I'm going to repurpose them into snowman parts.
Well, that just about brings us to the end of this podcast. One by one, I'll go through and you guys can say goodbye to everyone. So, Mahli-Ann, do you have anything you'd like to say?
If you Google my name, my surname is Butt, B-U-T-T. Yep, so doing a PhD means I'll eventually be Dr. Butt, it'll be great. And if you Google up my name, I've got Twitter, I've got Tumblr. I also post my writing on academia.edu.
Brilliant. And Mateja, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, sure. So you can find the articles that I write on games and film at Capsule Computers. You can also follow me on Twitter if you want to hear me talk about incredibly inane everyday things. I'm at Maki, M-A-K-I, _Suroh, S-U-R-O-H.
Brilliant. And Russell?
I have, if you want to find me on YouTube, it's probably the easiest way to do it. So The Adventures of Russell, plain and simple. I know it's a bit dorky. I came up with it when I was 18.
I love it.
But yeah, I have videos from GX. I've interviewed some game developers. I've still got about 3 or 4 more interviews to put up as well. And I've got my adventure there as well. So yeah, The Adventures of Russell. And I have AOR Gaming, which connects to that as well. So yeah, feel free to look me up. The Adventures of Russell, plain and simple.
Brilliant. And Jaymii, I believe you've got something important to tell us about.
So you can find me on Twitter at Jaymii Plays. That's JAYMII_plays. I just also want to quickly point out that all of GX's panels are now on YouTube. So if you didn't go to GX and you want to see about the panels that we're talking about, go on YouTube. They're all there. Check them out. They're amazing. All of us at GameFed also recently joined forces and made a big donation to the Checkpoint web series, which is a web series about mental health and video games. They've launched a Kickstarter. It's only doesn't have long left to go, and they're not at their goal yet. So we ask everyone who can donate to please donate to this great cause, because I'd absolutely love to have more quality content like that on the internet.
That's a lot of money raised.
We raised $532 from us at GameFed. So.
Cool. And none of us at GameFed are paid for what we do. That was just straight out of your pocket, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Brilliant. All right, and that wraps up our podcast. Feel free to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We're just about everywhere now.
Twitch is coming soon.
Oh yeah, Twitch is coming soon. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do anything for Unity Day because we haven't got it set up yet. Thanks to all for listening. We will see you at the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, thanks for having us.
Bye. See you guys.